Hi, David Goodwin here. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this short video. The outbreak of COVID-19 is understandably stressful for many people, and there are families who are not sure whether they're going to be able to cope. There is some good news in the middle of all this, and that is that if we learn how to cope and deal with this stress in a healthy way, then our children are going to be better for it. They're going to be more resilient. They're going to learn and know how to handle the inevitable challenges in their life ahead. We do need to be careful, however, to be aware that different people handle stress in different ways. Even two children in the same family may have different ways of processing and dealing with these types of situations. And there is one consideration that I think we need to think about at this time. I have done a little bit of research on what happens when children go through these types of calamities. And I've discovered that a pretty consistent figure is that up to 24 or 25% of children may have long-term effects. This means they may suffer from some form of anxiety disorder or a stress disorder in the years ahead. But there is some even more alarming news. When children are already living in a stressful situation, like we have seen in the bushfires, and then they get another calamity on top of that, before they've had a chance to properly process the first one, that figure jumps to 50%. With all that has happened in Australia this year, we should be very concerned about children that are trying to deal with one crisis on top of the other. And we should be aware if some children have not yet been able to process what happened with the bushfires. It's the same with children who live in a violent home, or children that live in homes that are unstable, and then they suffer a crisis. These children are much more likely to have long-term bad effects than other children. And so if you are aware that your child is still distressed or still showing signs of anxiety about what happened in the bushfires, these things have never been resolved, it might be time to sit down and have a talk to them and listen to some of the things we're going to talk about today and see what we can do or you can do to help your child process these things. The first thing I would like to say is that we all need to listen to good advice. There are so many conspiracy theories out and about today, or even things that we hear over the social media. There are, however, some good websites. We need to be looking at the good ones, and perhaps the best websites to look at are those that come from a government source. And we need to look at these often because the situation is changing so regularly. One of the best things that you can do to help your child through any stressful situation is to have a family talk, and to do it regularly. During these times, all distractions should be removed. The TV turned off, the mobile phones turned off, and have these regular talks with your children. As parents, we are not always the best at listening to their concerns. We should, if we want to be a good listener, we must know how to ask the right questions. And of course, we're talking about what is known as open-ended questions. These are questions that open up a topic that can be discussed. For example, you might say to your child or to your children, what do you know about COVID-19? Or you might ask, what do you think is the worst thing that COVID-19 could do to our family? This is a way that we open up the conversation to bring about some discussion. And of course, as children discuss and talk about these things, it might be needful for you to think about going even deeper and ask some more probing questions. For example, could you tell me a bit more about this? Or you might say, tell me what you mean when you said that you were worried about your friend. As children discuss and talk, you should be looking for signs of anxiety and be ready to give reassurance. Reassure them that at this time the risk to them as children is minimal. That it's very unusual for a child to get severe symptoms or even die in this pandemic. But nevertheless, there are things that are needed to be done and you need to do as a family. Just because the COVID-19 does not affect them as much as it might an older person, yet it's still possible that they could be carrying the germs that could affect the older person. And that's why we need to do things as a family, such as change our hygiene habits and engage in social distancing. You need to also identify the things that your children love doing but maybe are not able to do at this time, like maybe playing sport or taking music lessons. As you talk about these with your children, tell them that yes, it's true that we're not able to do them now, but it will only last for a few weeks, maybe at the most a few months, but they will be able to get back to those things. And then always look for things that they can do. And we'll give you a few ideas on these later that that your children may be really interested in and enjoy. Talking like this, putting their minds at rest, will reduce the risk of anxiety. Understanding too that children hear a lot of things, but they don't understand a lot. They put their own interpretation on those things. And children hear on the media, for example, they might watch on TV, how many times has it been played, those women fighting in the supermarket over toilet rolls. Children see this, that they're not used to seeing adults behave in such a way. We can look at it and laugh as adults, but children, it could be a point of anxiety. Why do those people need to fight over such basic things? And so when we listen to our children, pick up these sort of anxieties and put their mind at rest. And of course, sometimes questions come up that are very serious. They may ask a question, what will happen to Nana? What will happen to Granddad? What will happen to me? And you need to answer these questions as factually as you can. In particular, looking for misunderstandings that you can correct. So even when children are not showing any signs, they can still pass the virus on to another. That's an example of a factual statement that children need to understand, and that we have a responsibility to look after those that are more vulnerable, such as the elderly or sick. Now, we have produced a resource that is freely available to you. You simply need to go to the Kids Reach website and download it for free. It's a series of worksheets that there's about 20 of these worksheets in total. We have both a coloured edition and we have a black and white edition. I personally prefer the black and white because they're presented as colouring in, and it's quite good to sit round the table as a family and each do the colouring in and talking about the points that come up in those particular worksheets. I find in counselling that children don't really like just talking about their feelings or talking about what needs to be talked about, but you give them something to do, a little craft work, a little drawing, and often children are more than willing to talk during these times. So please go to the kidsreach.org.au website and download those totally for free. When we think about helping our children, we need to think about play, fun and laughter. These three things are particularly important to children. It's one of their most important needs. And so think about ways during these stressful times, think about ways that you can actually sit down as a family and play together. Maybe do a puzzle together, play a card game or a board game. Have a family night where you might put on a special meal that children really enjoy, and then having some games afterwards. There are lots of resources available on YouTube that give you ideas on what you can do as a family night. Routines, of course, are very important to help children deal with stress. The difficulty at this time is that the routines are gone because children are not able to go to school and many parents are not going to work, or at least are working from home. What some parents do is that ensure their children get up at the usual time as if they were going to school. The children put on their school uniforms and they wear those throughout the times that they would normally be at school. And this gives the feeling that this is the time when children need to be doing their schoolwork and doing activities that they would normally do at school. And it's not just working, it's also things like getting out and having a time to play games. It's doing little projects and whatever. So try and put some routine into your day. That's one of the best ways to help children settle and start to process what is happening. Think about how you can empower children to give them some sense of control. What do I mean by this? Children will be empowered when they know that there are things that they can do. For example, the social distancing. This is something they can do. You can practice it at home. You can teach them about the hygiene rules. You can also prepare a little box of food that you might set aside in case suddenly you were not able to get to the supermarket for 2 or 3 days. Children will see that and be involved in that, and it will give them the sense that things are not out of control, and be very empowering for them. Exercise, of course, helps with any form of stress, and it's still possible for us to be able to go for a family walk, and so I suggest you do that every day. Get out in the fresh air and do some walking exercise. That will help with their stress also. A big one for parents is try not to pass your anxieties on to your children. They do pick up what we feel. We may not want them to feel that way, but they pick it up anyway. So if there are things that are particularly worrying to you or concerning to you, try not to talk about those things when your children are around, and be patient. It takes children normally 3 weeks to change a behavior. And that means parents have to be persistent, yet patient. So for children to suddenly realize that they now have to wash their hands several times a day with soap and water, that they now have to practice social distancing rules, it's not easy for them to learn. They're not able to touch their face until they've washed their hands. Be patient, but be persistent as they learn these new behaviors. And be creative. In a way, think outside the box as to things you can do with your children. For example, have a project each day to ring some people. Write a list as a family about people that you could ring either on the phone or on some social media like Skype. So maybe ring the grandparents every day. Are there people in your church that are stuck at home alone and don't have family? Maybe a weekly phone call to that person. Anybody that's shut in or lonely, try and think of these ones that your children can be involved in talking to on the phone. Another creative idea is to make a fun family movie. Kids love doing this sort of thing, and it will give them an opportunity to use a program that they probably already have installed on their computer to edit such films. Choose a family value, or you might say something like this: what we like best about our family. Do interviews, use photos, do whatever you like, but have fun doing it. And then there is a wealth of audiobooks available to us. You may have heard of Kindle Audible, and this they have a number of books available which are just audiobooks. Now they have decided to make available hundreds of these books free during this time, so books that would be suitable for your children to listen to. Now when children listen to an audiobook, it's far more engaging for their brain than simply to watch it on TV, and it's particularly good for children who may not really be good readers. Also, did you know that your library has hundreds of these books available, which are accessible through an app called Overdrive, and they have a second app now called Libby. Just download the app. You'll need your library card, and you can access these books. Of course, you can also make a list of books that your children can read, set them a target. Another really good idea is to take the opportunity to teach your child to bake a cake, or make some biscuits, or even cook a meal. Maybe that's something you've wanted to teach your child to do for a long time but haven't had the time. Well, this is your time. This is your opportunity. And your children could come out of it with a real skill and a love for cooking. Jamie Oliver is particularly concerned about this, and just Google him. He's put together recipes that families can use at this time. Another thing to do, and I've already mentioned this, is to learn how to relax as a family. Set aside those family nights where you might watch a movie, have a family-friendly meal, and sit down and play a game of cards. Another idea is to watch Pilgrim's Progress. The people who own this movie have made it available online, free to watch, until the end of May. I'd suggest you take advantage of that, and it will give you some good things to discuss as a family also. In conclusion, I'd like to say, make an effort to create some really good memories for your children at this time. We don't want our children to look back on this time and see all the doom and gloom that there was. If they can look back on some good things also, they'll remember that, yeah, we did some baking together, we did this and we did that, and it was a good time. That will be very helpful. And remember that despair is probably our worst enemy. A good passage to read is Psalm 91. You could read it as a family, not the whole thing at one time, but maybe verse by verse, discuss it and talk about it, and be assured, let your children be assured that God is looking after them. Thank you again for watching this video, and please remember this resource that we've made, spent a lot of time creating it so that you can have it free and download it from our Kids Reach website. You can also download a copy of the PowerPoint that I've been using today, and of course you can go back and re-watch this video if you like. There are other places where you can get help also. If you feel particularly troubled or your children need somebody to talk to, I'm sure you know of these people, but please take advantage of them if you feel you need to. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and we do wish you all the very best for you and your family. Thank you.